Bangladesh 430 and 223 for 8 declared. West Indies 259 and 110 for the loss of 3, which means they need another 285 runs for victory on the final day. Bangladesh, they need 3 wickets. In fact, they need 7 wickets. They've already taken 3. Welcome to Wayne Holder, my co-host, and our special guest for this review session, Hendy, Wallace, and Jason King. Greetings, gentlemen.
Hi, good afternoon.
Well,
yes, good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon to you and viewers.
I know that Wayne Holder is a very religious man, and therefore I'm going to start with him because I believe that he will have some plans to help West Indies towards this target. Wayne?
Well, you must, I guess you want me to pray? Good, well, yes, hello, gentlemen. Yes, Philip, I know that you have mocked me in the past.
Not about praying. Not about praying. They would never do that.
Called me a dreamer.
Oh, dreamer, yes.
But this time I'm not dreaming. I'm praying this time.
Okay.
I'm actually praying that Kyle Mears goes on from here to make 100 and lead the West Indies to a marvelous victory in this first test. If that should happen, it will make a mockery of my initial response to the naming of the team because I did not even have Kyle Mears in my team. I was going to play for Raymond Rifford instead. I do admit that. But I have been mocked by this game of cricket before. This game has embarrassed me and thrown egg in my face on numerous occasions, and I've lived to tell the tale. So what is one more time? But yes, West Indies have it all to do. Well, I guess even a draw would be a victory for West Indies. But I pray.
Well, Hendy Wallace, unlike Wayne Holder, I actually had Kyle Mears in my team. But before we even zero in on Kyle Mears, what are your impressions of day 4 of this test match?
Well, so far, I think that Bangladesh obviously holds the key. I think that they are in the ascendancy at this stage. They've played some excellent cricket so far, excellent test match cricket as far as I'm concerned. If we go back to the selection of their team with the 4 spinners, I think the perfect scenario for them would have been to be bowling last and defending a fairly formidable total. And so far, I think that they've checked those 2 boxes and they are really in a very strong position. Therefore, I thought that they absorbed the pressure that the West Indies had to offer. The attack didn't seem that penetrative, but if I would give some credit to the West Indies in that they were able to keep the run rate in check. And it was really just at the back end when Monimal tried to, after he got his century, he then tried to accelerate, and then we saw the cluster of wickets for Bangladesh. So I think West Indies sort of held their own, but the Bangladesh side were very much ahead of the game. In an ideal world, again, for the West Indies, had this seen out those overs before stumps without loss, I think it would have certainly put a different picture on the possible results. As it stands now, still all results are possible, but losing those 3 wickets just before stumps would have put Bangladesh in a very favorable position.
Jason, another sleepless night for you. Was it worth it?
I enjoy cricket, Philip, as you know. So any opportunity to watch cricket, especially test cricket, I take the opportunity to. So having 3 different devices on following 3 different test matches, because there was no way that I could miss the opportunity to watch the other 2. Yeah, the night was worth it. As I said, based on day 3, with the 6 sessions left, it was very important for us not to lose the sessions or to lose them badly. And for the most part, we held our own. 200 plus runs scored in the day. You know, we guys kept it together quite well in terms of the run rate. And as Hendy alluded to, that run rate started to increase towards the back end of the Bangladesh innings. And they lost some wickets. We were able to get 4 wickets for 17 runs. But coming from a position where you had a deficit of 171, it's always going to be difficult. It was always going to be difficult for the West Indies to recover to a point where they had a real chance of winning the game. I didn't think there was really a possibility of this game drawing. It looks possible at this point in time, but I am quite confident that if Kyle Mears bats for any significant portion of the day, the West Indies will get close to the target based on his attacking nature. But as predicted, the Bangladesh team, their bowlers, would be bowling the ball straight at the stumps. And the 3 wickets that we lost were as a result of that. 1 LBW, caught back pad, the captain pushing forward a ball that was heading towards his stumps. And then Shane Mosley, unfortunately, getting a ball which kept quite a bit low. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to get his bat down straight to be able to prevent the ball from hitting him on his pads. And he was plumb LBW. But with 200 plus to get on the 5th day of a game where the wicket is starting to do quite a bit more, it's going to be, the first hour is going to be very interesting. If we could avoid losing wickets in that first hour, and especially the first session, Bangladesh will have to change their game plan. And I alluded to previously the fact that you have to think the entire game throughout the game. And if you do that, it forces them to do something different, which makes it to a certain extent a little easier for you. So like what happened with India on that final day of that test match in Australia, the 4th test, is something, this is set up that kind of way. But we can't afford to lose any wickets. And Bonner's feet are moving, so he is getting behind the ball quite well. Once the guys select the right shots, we should see an improved performance, and hopefully, to go with Wayne's prayers, we will come out with the better result from this game.
At the start of the day, Hendy, the West Indies were in a position where they needed to pick up some early wickets, make some early inroads into the Bangladeshi second innings so as to avoid any formidable target. As it turned out, we weren't able to make those early inroads. And once that happened, the task was always going to be a daunting one. Your thoughts on the way the West Indies bowlers handled themselves in that situation?
Well, first of all, I think that the last 45 minutes of day 3 certainly would have helped Bangladesh coming into the 4th day, because West Indies picked up the early wickets, those first 3 wickets quite early, but then you had that partnership that saw Bangladesh comfortably to the stump. So they would have been in that frame of mind on resumption for day 4. The close of play probably came at a good time for the West Indies as well, because you just felt that that initial impact had just waned slightly, and they were just starting to become a little bit more relaxed. So it gave the West Indies an opportunity to regroup and come fresh on the morning of day 4, but they didn't seem to have that same impact. They tried with the pace early on of Shannon Gabriel, who seems to be used as the shot bowler, which I can understand that with his extra pace and aggression. But the Bangladesh batsmen were able to weather that particular storm and the threat of Rakeem Cornwall with his off spin. Again, they were able to keep things in check. where in the absence of getting wickets, the run rate did not really get away from the West Indies. So I thought the Bangladeshis played it quite cleverly, and on a pitch that is not deteriorating as rapidly as was initially thought, you can still bat on it. And just to support what Jason said, batting on it seems to be a case where you want to have a positive intent, even if it's in defense. You want to ensure that you're committed to the defensive strokes, and you must be able to score off the good delivery. So you often hear batsmen talk about batting time and waiting for bad deliveries. I think this scenario is slightly different, where you have to score off scoreable balls. It doesn't have to be 4s or 6s, but especially with the left hand, right hand combination, to create that challenge for the bowler where you're alternating the strike as much as possible. Because ideally, any bowler, but especially spinners, like to string together deliveries at one particular batsman to apply pressure.
There has been some criticism of the withholding, for lack of a better word, of Jamel Warrican, who was your best bowler in the first innings. The results, the scorecard suggests that. There was some suggestion that maybe he was held back for a bit too long. He should have been introduced a bit earlier. How do you think of that?
Yeah, from this distance, that was my thought process as well. Once there was any indication that the ball was going to be spinning, I felt that it was necessary to utilize whatever assistance you could with your bowling attack. So having the 2 spinners, and you saw what Rakeem Cornwall was able to do, I certainly would have thought it would have influenced the captain to go to his all-spin attack quite early. Now, if we look at the other side of the coin, you would say that anything the fast bowlers were going to get out of the pitch or with that ball would be when it was at its hardest. So again, maybe the mindset was to looking at his attack in its entirety to see what was the best option for each individual. So you wanted your faster bowlers to use that ball when it's as hard as possible, bearing in mind that your spinners, Rakeem Cornwall and Morgan, will have a lot of work to do as the test match progresses. So maybe that could have played a part as well.
Jason, you would have heard Hendy speak of the hardness of the ball, of that new ball. I was making an observation that batting on this particular pitch, which by the way has held up very, very well. All the talk we hear of pitches in Bangladesh disintegrating and cracking up and turning into dust balls. I think this pitch has really stood the test and has stood up very, very well. That even gives us a chance going into the final day. But I find that batting gets easier once the ball loses that initial hardness. Once we get into the 35th, 40th over. And my evidence is that partnership between Blackwood and the Silver in the West Indies first innings. If you recognize, that partnership would have started midway with that ball in the probably 50th over or so. Once the Bangladeshis were able to change the ball when the new ball became due, then we saw the game spin on its head, because it's with that ball that they got rid of both Blackwood and the Silver and wiped away the West Indies tail. Did you observe that had any effect? This one is for Jason King.
Yeah, that I would say may have had an impact, but the reality is in Test cricket, a team must expect to bat longer than 80 overs. So you're expected to at least face 2 new balls. So you have to know it is coming. But at the end of the day, the 2 wickets in terms of the Silver and Blackwood, I don't think were as a result of the ball. I think they may have thought with the harder ball, there may have been an opportunity to score. So maybe they started to reach for balls that they wouldn't have a few overs before. The Silver reaching for a wide ball, because the ball is going to come off the bat a lot harder. So it would obviously go further. You get more bang for your buck. And Blackwood just trying to get that ball down the leg side. The ball travels, a harder ball travels across the outfield faster. So it may have led them to try to get more runs from less balls because the ball is harder. And it may then have created their downfall. Now, at this point, we've batted 40 overs. So it means we have another 40 before the next new ball. The ball has not really been swinging tremendously for the faster bowlers. What they've been doing is targeting the stumps and bowling the ball straight at the stumps, and that's where they have had some impact. But mid innings, the ball has not been swinging. So there's going to be a fair amount of spin to face. And they're going to try to maximize the amount of overs that they bowl tomorrow. They're going to put themselves in a position where they probably want to bowl more at a rate higher than would give you 30 overs per session, so that they can maximize the amount of balls that they bowl and potentially give themselves a better chance to get the 7 wickets that they need to get. At 40 overs, the ball is still hard enough to get runs. And between Bonner and Mears, I would expect that they would be able to, bar difficult deliveries, to be able to score. But we are going to have to bat quite a few overs tomorrow. The challenge that I have is once we have a good partnership, we then tend to lose quite a few wickets quickly. Even if we have 2 successive partnerships, we then whatever we do, we lose a cluster of wickets. And for a 5th day, I mean, it's been an achievement for this team to get to the 5th day. But on a 5th day, cannot afford to lose that cluster of wickets if we want to show improvement. We need to win the first 2 sessions if we can. I don't know if they have the capabilities to do it, but what I've seen in this 4th innings thus far, the 2 that are at the crease are showing a bit of fight. And with De Silva and Blackwood to come, they showed some fight in the 1st innings. And once they employ those same techniques, they should be able to handle themselves with the Bangladesh bowlers that are going to be presented to them.
Hendy, looking back on day 4 again, the West Indies bowling once more. We saw Shannon Gabriel proving very effective on a track that offered absolutely nothing to the pace bowlers, but because of his extra pace and the hostile manner in which he went about his business, very manful display by Shannon Gabriel. Were you surprised, though, to see Gabriel respond in such a way and basically take over the leadership of the attack, if only for a day?
Not surprised at all, because I've seen the fitness of Shannon Gabriel since the England tour. Then we went to New Zealand, and now this particular tour. And each tour, he looks to me as if he was getting fitter and leaner. He certainly looked a lot leaner for this series as well. And his pace has always been up. Each of those series that the West Indies have played, his pace has been up. So it was good to see that he was identified and was able to execute the role of the enforcer, if you want to use that phrase, where he was the aggressor and the more aggressive bowler in the attack, using the short deliveries and also challenging the stumps, bowling a full length at pace. So it was good to see that. And who knows, we always talk about bowlers hunting in pairs, and maybe being able to unsettle some of the batsmen may have helped the spin bowlers, who were the ones that eventually got the praise for taking the wickets. But there were occasions where Gabriel certainly caused some discomfort for the batsmen. So it wasn't easy sailing
and his control was relatively good. You know, sometimes we ask for everything, length and line and pace and accuracy and all that. You know, from a fast bowling perspective, is asking for a lot, especially in humid conditions. And on a surface that offers absolutely nothing for the fast bowlers, you have to be able to bring that X factor, which is either pace, swing, conventional swing, or reverse swing.
On the other hand, though, we saw Kemar Roach, the established leading bowler in the West Indies team. His record speaks for itself. But he proved, well, first of all, just 7 overs in the second innings. Did you find that strange? And did you realize, or do you agree that he was somewhat ineffective nonetheless?
I would think, I didn't read anything or hear anything about an injury or whatever, so I don't imagine that contributed to the amount of overs that he bowled in the second innings. But I would think that from what I just mentioned about the surface and what is probably required to be effective as a bowler, Kemar Roach's strength would have been with the new ball. And that would be to get some swing with the new ball and challenge both edges of the bat, the outside edge and the inside edge. So apart from that, there was not an awful lot on offer for him, not having the extreme pace, not being proficient at reverse swing. So suddenly you've taken 2 elements out of his effectiveness as the ball got older. So the role then he was asked to perform was been maybe more so the holding role. And sometimes, you know, the ego has to be put aside and perform the role that is in the best interest of the team. And if Shannon Gabriel was able to get a little bit more out by using his extreme pace, then it was prudent for Kemar Roach to recognize that his best bet then was to play that holding role, which he did pretty well in those middle overs with the softer ball in the first innings. But in the second innings, once that shine went off, then he looked more and more or less and less effective.
Jason, the West Indies engaged 3 debutants in this test match. We had Kyle Mears and Kruma Bonner and Shane Mosley. What was your take on their performances up to this stage?
Well, unfortunately for Shane, he has not had the opportunity to show anything of any worth. Hopefully, he is able to get another opportunity. I mean, the fact that you get into one game, there's no guarantee, no matter how well you perform, that you are able to get a second test. You can ask, if he was still alive, we would be able to ask Andy Gantoum that question. We knew he only played 1 test despite scoring 112. And so hopefully he gets that opportunity, but he just needs to get bat on ball, get out to the bowling. He's staying a little deep in his crease for the few moments that he spent at the crease, but he just needs to get out and get positive. Bonner has looked like someone who scored runs recently and is trying, while he's at the crease, to turn the strike over and try to build an innings. The restart of day 3, unfortunately, he got a decent ball that turned. To get one early like that, after having not got one the day before, may have been a bit of a surprise, and it caught his edge and went to slip. But what I saw from him this morning, he's moving his feet, and I can't help but say that could only augur well for him. Once you move your feet as a batsman, you are always in the right position. You are able to change the position that the bowler is feeling that you would be in when he delivers the ball. So the ball actually has a different trajectory once you move your feet and get them into the right position. So he is doing the right things. And once he keeps his head on, he should score, because he's looking to keep the scoreboard ticking over. In terms of Kyle has brought a bit of aggression to the game that we have not seen for a few test matches. Blackwood did have a similar type of aggression in terms of hitting the ball, but in terms of balls to choose to hit away or balls to turn into bad balls, Blackwood wasn't as selective as I've seen Kyle be. So once I noticed a slight change in this second innings where he's trying to get his bat out in front. He is putting in a stride and he's staying somewhat leg side of the ball to make sure that he does cover that arm ball. And if the ball does turn, it will turn past his bat. He seems to be playing within his limitations. But the one thing he has been good at is spotting when the ball is dropped slightly short. And then the bowlers are at his mercy because he does strike the ball very, very hard. He's very strong. So he is hitting the ball to the boundary. And he's not hitting it just in one particular area. So he's picking the gaps and trying to get the ball away. So he, for me, out of the three thus far, has had the best start. Bonner is not too far behind. He's showing the mentality that you need. He hasn't appeared to be in any significant amount of trouble, and seems to be, as I said, applying that mental strength that is needed to make sure that you can last. Now, Bonner doesn't have a ton of first class hundreds. So even at the first class level, he has not batted for an entire day on many occasions. But this is the best time that he could probably show us that he's capable of batting for an entire day. But once between him and Kyle, as I said, I keep stressing it, they can break it into small bits and try to get from session to session, or break the sessions into smaller bits and just try to get piece by piece to the end of each session and get the team to where the team needs to be.
Hendy, if we look forward to the final day and even beyond that, really and truly, you've seen the dependence on spin in terms of the selectors, but have the spinners really been prepared for this? Because we had Cornwall, for example, over the past year and a bit being the preferred spinner, but it's hardly got a game. And then we got in Workin and Permal, who played even further back. Isn't there a case maybe for picking a spinner, a spinner of choice, and playing him as often as possible, whatever the conditions, so that when the conditions are more suitable, you've actually got a player who's experienced, who is confident, and who really can depend on to really possibly win your match?
Well, you've heard the chairman of selectors speak about horses for courses, and I think that in the last two series that were played overseas, it probably wasn't ideal for keeping the spinner in the attack. If you remember, in New Zealand, there was one test match where New Zealand even played 5 seamers and left out their left arm spinner Satner, who by all accounts has been identified as the frontline spinner. Now you look at teams like Australia, who, come what may, will always employ their 4 frontline bowlers as 3 seamers and Nathan Lyons. Now, I think it's probably a bit of a luxury to go into that combination of attack, regardless of the conditions, especially if you have 3 quality seamers. So you can afford to make up for it, and hopefully as the match goes on and the pitch deteriorates, that the spinner will come into his own eventually. So you can use the spinner then in the first innings where there's less assistance, more so as a support role, and then he comes into the attacking role in the second innings under normal conditions. But I don't think that West Indies has such luxuries. And unfortunately, Cornwall, who has been identified as the frontline spinner, probably hasn't had the opportunity to have a consistent run up until now. I suspect that once we get conditions that are similar to what we're encountering at the moment, that you will see a bit more of that. But unfortunately, we were in locations like England and New Zealand, which was not conducive for spin bowling.
Can I just interject here and say that the bowling attack is missing and what has been an important cog for the team for a little while in terms of I don't want to say a fifth bowler, in that if there was one other person, that they would be the fifth bowler. The team under Jason Holder had that all-rounder who could probably make the team both as a batsman and a bowler, and could get you quality runs and could give you quality spells. Now, I know when you had Raymond Reefer in your team for this test, where Raymond would probably have bowled more overs. And Kyle does bowl a bit, but was not given enough overs in this game to soak up time, because in 5 days 450 overs is a lot of overs. So you do sometimes need persons to come in and soak up time. And we had two fast bowlers in the game, both of whom at different stages were not as effective as they could have been. But there was an opportunity for another seamer to come in, I believe, and just stop the scoring a bit. It would allow the other bowlers, the spinners who would be coming from the other end, to get a little bit of rest or reset to come for the next over. Because as we know, a fast bowler takes longer generally to complete an over than a spinner. But things were happening quite a bit. I mean, our over rate in this game, I can say for sure, was a lot better than it has been for years. But that's because we're playing two spinners who bowled a whole lot of overs. But we still needed to take up some more time, soak up some more time in the game, and give Bangladesh then the put the pressure on Bangladesh to try to work out other ways to score. They were able to score quite freely throughout. They weren't tied down. There was no period of 5 consecutive maidens or anything like that. And that third seamer possibly could have given that once the person had employed the right process and understood what the role would have been. And it's a role that Roach probably could have played, but we played two fast bowlers who for most of their career have been attacking fast bowlers and bowling in short spells. They've not been guys that have had to come and bowl 15 overs on the trot and tie down one end. And we could have done with that in this game. So it's an element that we can probably look up for the future to ensure that is an element that we cover within the game.
Well, the record shows that the spin bowlers, the two spinners that were employed, bowled some 90 overs in the first innings, and then half of that in the second innings, around 45 overs. I'm going to ask if there's any temptation going forward to maybe make an adjustment to the side and employing that policy of horses for courses, bring the third spinner and to follow the lead of the home team, Bangladesh, who played 4. But bringing the third spinner in Versami Pamal into the lineup at the expense of Akima Roach, for instance. I'm asking that question to both of our guests.
I would think it would be a very bold move by the selectors to go that route. And we have heard from one of our regional captains before where he never believed in taking sand to the beach. And by that, meaning in a case like this, bringing more spin to the opposition who are very proficient at playing spin. I can't really see how they would go that route. But after the assessment of the performance in this test match, then Kemar Roach, I believe, will have a fair say in this, because I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with his returns in this game. But I'd be surprised if they went that route. I really would be.
Jason?
Yeah, that would be, I don't want to say unprecedented, but somewhat. I don't know if it is absolutely necessary. The challenge is we did not score enough runs. We did struggle to get the Bangladeshis out in the first innings and they made 430. But I do think that we also did not field and catch as well as we should have for a team at that level. So I can't say that the bowlers were terribly ineffective. If we'd taken all of our catches, Bangladesh it would not have made 430. I would make that bold suggestion.
Jason, if I may really interrupt you, I'd be taking that one catch that was put out ball short leg. He beat the batsman.
Correct.
That really truly could have made a huge difference. You know,
Yeah.
So the comment about the catching is very, very rare.
And that's why we always hear the old adage about catches winning matches, and dropping them also causes you to lose. So you have to be on top of your game. I don't think that the conditions in the second test may be similar, but they have to be assessed when the team gets there. Records on the ground can be looked at. And I also speak a lot about video analysis and think that things like that are very important so that we understand what has happened in the history of test matches played at that particular ground at this particular time of year with the conditions, similar conditions, etc., and try to go that detailed before determining what the composition of the team should be. Now, the persons who may say, well, Mosley made 2 and 12, so he didn't have an impact on the game. But there's nothing saying that he can't be the one that would stand up in the next game. So in terms of the third spinner, it's a conversation that could be had. I honestly don't know at whose expense it would have been. I will say that as a senior bowler, Kemar Roach may need to step up and show that he is the lead of the attack and knows how to bowl in all of the different situations. So where he needs to be, can go ahead and try to blast out with the new ball, do such. Where he needs to hold, use your experience and show that you can tie down the batsman. It's no need to go to hit stumps all the time. Sometimes you just need to soak up an end. And if he can show that, I think there will be overall improvement in the team. But the catching, etc., the catching and the fielding has to be first class.
Couldn't agree with you more, Jason. And if you're talking about horses for courses, and you're using that to leave out the Shamar holder from the squad, for example, I think one could leave out a Roach, Kemar Roach from the next test match as well, because clearly, if the second test is going to be similar in conditions to the first, this is certainly not a course for him.
Yeah, at this point, it's not really about being sentimental or anything like that. It's about winning the game. I follow the National Football League, and there's a team from New Orleans, the Saints, and they have the quarterback who has the most passing yards ever in the history of the league. And there are plays where he is pulled out because he's not the most effective in those plays. So that goes with the horses for courses. There are other teams who do it right now. Broad and Anderson are not playing in the same 11. They have not played in the same 11 for a little while. And it's because there's a role for one or the other while they're playing the other. So right now, England is playing both Dom Bess and Jack Leach.
And you know, Jason, this is something that I wouldn't normally do in a face-to-face situation. But since we're not face-to-face, I will risk putting this proposal to Hendy Wallace. And without fear of any pushback. And Hendy, I am thinking that for the final test, I would like to see Raymond Reaper in the 11. I had him in my 11 for the first test. We've been grooming him now. He's been groomed now for a couple of years. I think it's time to see what he can do. And I think there's a case for leaving out both of the fast bowlers bringing Ria Marifa in, which doesn't necessarily make the bowling attack any less potent, and it certainly adds a bit of batting strength. But what it does, even more so, it gives you a chance to see what this young man has the capacity to do moving forward.
Yes, it will certainly give him an opportunity, and you just feel that Marifa has been waiting in the wings for quite some time without really getting a chance to prove what he can do at the test level. But to bring him in, as I said, will be a drastic change to your format. And you would also have to be clear what the policy is for this particular tour. Without being disrespectful to these players that are in Bangladesh, they're clearly the second string West Indies side. I think all things being equal and everybody being available, I don't think that maybe 6 of those players will be on this particular tour. So if in fact you're going to use the opportunity to see exactly what the skill levels are like for test match cricket, then I think you will get a lot of support for that decision, Philip. But again, do you really see that in one test match? As Jason alluded to the point with Shane Mosley, you know, have you really seen what this young man can offer? He was a bag of nerves, which is perfectly understandable. And then of all the deliveries he could get, when he's looking to survive the stumps, was a grubber on the stumps. You know, he, as the old people say, he probably needs a bush bath. But it really depends on what were the selectors, what were Cricket West Indies looking to get out of this shortened tour with a below strength side, if it was to expose persons, because I really thought they would have been doing something like that in England, where I thought they had the perfect opportunity to use the playing staff a little bit more, and they delayed that until they got to New Zealand. So it's a bit of a dilemma what they really intend to do, but that is an option, of course, where for the 2 test matches, you look to see exactly what your playing staff is able to give you.
Very quickly, gentlemen, what's going to happen on the final day?
Well, I am quietly optimistic and hopeful that we can see something out of the batsmen that remain to come. The 4 being Bonner, Mears, Blackwood, and De Silva have shown so far in this game what they are somewhat capable of. And hopefully the wicket would cooperate and allow them to do such. But 8, 9, 10, and 11 also need to show some fight. And I broke it down and thought, well, if we have another 4, if we had those last 4 wickets with 20 runs each as a partnership, that would have been 80 less runs that we would have to chase now. That would have probably taken another hour and a half at least out of the game. So you would be in the scenario would be so different. So 80 runs closer to victory, perhaps, or an hour and a half less to bat for a draw.
So you're looking at a drawn game. You're optimistic of a drawn game then tomorrow. That's what you're saying.
I am. I would say being realistic. It is unlikely. The probability is against us, but I can only back the West Indies.
Okay, what about you, Hendy?
My optimism would be for a victory. I'll tell you why. If
victory for who, by the way?
For the West Indies.
Okay.
So if Kyle Mears,
you did say optimism, so pardon the clarification. Yeah.
So if what I'm going to break it down similar to Jason. If Kyle Mears and Bonner can bat the entire session unbroken, and they can take us deep into if we get to the end of the second session and not lose any more than 2 wickets, given the style in which these players have been going, it means that we'll be scoring at least at 3 runs and over. So suddenly you're going to be in the hunt. And the Bangladeshis with the spinning, their bowling attack at the moment, they're going to easily bowl at 18 overs an hour. 16, 18 overs an hour easily. So suddenly you're looking at maybe 100 overs at least to bat. And I don't care how they try to slow it down. That means that if you're scoring just under 3 runs and over, you're going to be in the hunt. But as Jason said, wickets intact is crucial. Our partnerships are critical. The way this partnership is going, they will need, obviously the pitch is going to be rolled in the morning. So really how they get through the first hour and by extension that first session. And because of the free scoring nature of both those players, once they occupy the crease, they will score. So you talk about the players to come. Blackwood, again, he will take a little while to set himself and he scores. De Silva is pretty solid. And we know if we get into the last hour and we need to score quickly, that is playing into the hands of someone like a Cornwall. So I don't expect our guys to bat an entire day to save the game. If we bat an entire day, it will be to win the game.
Win?
Well, essentially, all bets are still on. I mean, any one of 4 results is still possible. Realistically, the West Indies on form would do well to bat the first 2 sessions. So I think the West Indies are really in a position of their backs to the wall. I would love to remain optimistic and still hope that, yes, West Indies can pull off one of those Brisbane miracles for the West Indies. And let me tell you, if that were to happen, we'd be talking about that long after all 4 of us have left this planet.
Well, the game of glorious uncertainties is certain to bring some interest and excitement on the final day. And here is for the sake of certainly Jason King and Hendy Wallace, who are full of optimism, certainly for their sakes, and all those who hold that optimism. Here's hoping that the boys from the Caribbean can give a good account for themselves. We'll be watching Anything Cricket Test Match Watch. Join us again for the review of the final display, when we hope that the news will be very palatable for those of us in the Caribbean.